Right. Hi, this is Ken Annandale, all the way from Mauritius. I'm going to be talking to you about a very important subject today. It's the Occupational Health and Safety Act and the changes that are going to be taking place in the next couple of weeks, months, or maybe even years. And obviously, there's some history involved here. I've been around for a while. I'll just talk a little bit about myself at a later stage. But I just want to say to everybody that's joined us, thank you so much. I know it's a lunchtime, but I do need to mention to you that there is a lot of information. So if I happen to overrun the 45-minute slot, please forgive me. I'm going to run right to the end of the presentation and then make the YouTube URL available to everybody to see all of this information, because I don't think we're going to have an opportunity of running this session twice. I think it's going to be important to finish it off. So with your forgiveness and your courtesy, I'm going to go right to the end. And then right when we get to the end, I'm going to stop the recording and then just open the microphones for those of you that would still like to converse and tell us your thoughts and ideas and so forth. We'll be able to answer questions. Now, today we have a couple of people. We have, I believe, 2 attorneys and an advocate, or a former attorney and advocate. And I also believe that we have a former Department of Employment and Labor inspector here. So once again, we'll talk about the fact that I'm not a specialist, I'm not an expert, I'm a generalist, and I love the topic and I thoroughly enjoy it. Now, if you happen to be watching this video and you did not attend the afternoon session, no problem at all. We'd like to ask everybody to share this with as many people as possible so that people know and understand what this legislation and the changes are all about. So with that, I'm going to go straight onto screen share, and I'm going to, let's just quickly get it over here. I'm going to get straight into the presentation. Okay, so I'm trusting that everybody can see that. And if Richard or somebody can just send me a message saying that you can see my screen, I would appreciate that. So what I want to do is I want to get straight into the presentation and talk a little bit about where we stand in South Africa, what's going to be happening in the near future, and so forth. And to do that, we're going to look at a bit of history in terms of occupational health and safety legislation and the proposed changes that have been in the offing since the Occupational Health and Safety Act was actually promulgated. So we'll be looking at a bit of history, and with that, you will have a fair idea of what is possibly going to be coming your way. Now, for everybody that's joined, can I ask you to please register, if you don't mind, just by sending 2014 2014 to my cell number, OH2 920 8912. That's OH2 920 8912. Just pop a message to me right now and let me know that you've registered. And there's a good reason for that. I've got a couple of gifts that I want to hand out as well. Some of you may or may not have the book that I've sent. If not, thank you very much. I see it's coming through. You may not have received the book, The 1 Minute Safety Manager, yet. I'll make that available to you. And I know for a fact that, and thank you for those compliments. Somebody wrote a compliment to me and said, great book, nice story, and it really means a lot. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Okay, well, everybody's registering. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I keep an accurate database of who's gone through this session over here for a good reason. But maybe you're a brand new person. This is the first time that you've been here. Somebody's just actually invited you to come along, and you need to shut this phone up. And there we go. Yay, got that down there. Maybe you have just come as a result of the fact that somebody in your team has said you attend this meeting. Now, I really would like you to register. And if you go onto safetytrainingkits.com, www.safetytrainingkits.com, you'll see on the front page there that you can register. And the reason is that it goes into our database automatically, and we've got an automated system, which is really quite cool. For those of you that know or don't know us, we're a South African-based company, although Penny and I happen to be in lockdown in Mauritius. And that's Penny and myself at the bottom. We love cycling. On our left-hand side, you'll see a lady holding my book, Mover Shakers, Moaners and Groaners, together with Penny and myself. That's our 𝒂𝒑𝒐𝒑𝒐𝒔 accreditation specialist, Stephanie. She's a freelance lady. On her left-hand side is Munira Isaacs. She is responsible for running our ETDP 𝒂𝒑𝒐𝒑𝒐𝒔 accredited facilitator, assessor, and moderator training. We've outsourced that to her as well, and she does that via a blended learning system. On Munira's left-hand side, you'll see our accounting team, and the man in black, his name is 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒍𝒂𝒂𝒍. He is our accountant, and my goodness, what an amazing accountant he is. And that's some of his team. Then above him is Devan. He's responsible for our e-learning system. He's the custodian, and he's also one of our affiliates. Then, then we have Devet. He's responsible for computers, automation, integration, SEO, and so forth. The lady next to him on his right-hand side is Charlene Piens. Charlene is our 𝒑𝒐𝒑 accreditation ready specialist. She takes all our training material and makes sure that it's ready for 𝒑𝒐𝒑 accreditation and unit standard alignment. The young lady on her right-hand side is my daughter Natalie, and she's responsible to help our affiliates set up their online marketing, social media, and so forth. She has a degree from UCT in media, and she comes as a part of the service to our affiliates. And then the tall, hairy guy is my son Nathan and his wife Deirdre. Nathan is our customer relations manager, and Deirdre is our quality management specialist when it comes to the training material. So there we go, a little bit about ourselves. Then just to let you know that what we do is we actually help people set up their own businesses as trainers and go through the entire process with them as far as possible, helping them get their businesses up and running as quickly as possible, including business orientation, including guidance, including a host of things such as the actual 𝒑𝒐𝒑 accreditation itself. But more about that at a later stage. I've been around for a number of years, and when I say a number of years, about 30 years in the health and safety world. And I'm an advisory member of the 𝒑𝒐𝒑 SHASTAC, which is the 𝒑𝒑 Health and Safety Training Advisory Committee. And we've been dealing with the Department of Employment and Labor, specifically around the issue of first aid trainers and so forth. And you probably all know that that's all changed now. So we've been very involved with that. And of course, we still have an input, and we want to see where the Department of Employment and Labor are going to take that. Now, very important for me to say this. I'm not a lawyer. I'm an ex-policeman, but I enjoy law, and I enjoy criminal law, and I've been around for some time. I was a cop in the South African Police Services, the police force, for 5-6 years, and then I was a military policeman for a while before joining the Marines and the Navy. So whenever it comes to legal issues, I always defer to people in the know, to somebody like the 𝒑𝒑 advocate, Reinhard Luke, and he is probably one of the best sounding boards that we've got at the moment, and he comes as a service to 𝒑𝒑 members, and you can ask him questions and so forth. But on this panel over here, on this discussion, we've got a couple of attorneys, and it's going to be a joy to work with them as well. And we've just been speaking to Rian, and there is Kevin Erasmus as well. So we have people that we can defer to. Now, I want to get straight into this and say that it's so important that the legislation be updated. Some of you remember the Tongaat Mall incident where the building collapsed, killing a number of people. And I did a little Google the other day just to see what had happened. So far, nobody seems to have been prosecuted on this. And then I discovered that Jay Singh, the person who was creating or making the mall, the developer, he recently died. So he's not going to be prosecuted as well. Now, the Department of Employment and Labor, formerly Department of Labor, they knew that things had to change. So they brought out in 2014 a draft bill. And that bill in 2014 was discussed fairly widely. Some of you may have been involved in the discussions. Certainly, Reinhard Lutz was involved there, and you can see this on his website back in 2014, where he spoke about it. I had the privilege of traveling around the country and speaking and creating an awareness around this legislation, like I did when the legislation morphed from the MOS Act, the Old Machinery and Occupational Safety Act, to the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So I was very involved in that, and I saw the document at the time, and I'm going to share that information with you today, giving you a little bit of foundation as to what you can expect in future. Now, more recently, in fact, on the 10th of March, the Department of Employment and Labor issued a statement saying that the bill, this new one, 2020, has been approved by Cabinet for discussion. And with that, I decided to start the Occupational Health and Safety Bill Coffee Club, and you're members of the Coffee Club. So welcome to the Coffee Club. Now, a little bit of information as to how we operate. We operate digitally as far as possible. So you will get messages from me with your permission, of course, on WhatsApp, on Facebook, on YouTube, via MailChimp, and via Zoom messages where we share them with people as well. We've created a Facebook group, which is a private group, so you can go onto that, you can comment, you can talk, you can, and in fact, Rian, there's a good example over there where you can gladly post your information about the book that you created, and also, Anna-Marie, you can tell us about that. So if you wouldn't mind just quickly taking a photograph of that page, it'll then allow you to go on, you can register, and I will then, will moderate it, Natalie will moderate it, and you will then be let in. And I will be posting things like the videos of the previous events. Now, we've got 2 other events that we've hosted already, session 1 and session 2, and we've got a YouTube channel. So if you wouldn't mind, I don't mind this at all, if you could take your camera, take a photograph of the page, the URL, so it's YouTube Safety Health Training Material, and you can access these videos plus lots and lots of other videos that we've got. Now, having said that, because this is all free access and we're familiar with the PAIA or becoming familiar with it, you're at liberty to send me a message. If I start irritating you with too many messages, just say, Ken, enough. And you can opt out, but you can stay a friend on the Facebook page where you can stay in touch with what's happening. Now, the whole intention, of course, is that we would go through a process of speaking to health and safety practitioners and or training providers and or managers and so forth, and just refresh the understanding of how the legislation works, what's currently in the Act and so forth. We spoke in video number 2 on the principles, just basic foundational principles. We touched on some of them, not all of them. Time doesn't allow. Then we're going to draw comparisons between the old and the new, the old being the current Occupational Health and Safety Act, Act 85, and the new being the bill as well. And then finally, we'll also just open it up for comment so that you can comment. Now, something I do wish to say to you at this stage is, and I say this respectfully, I'm not going to be dealing with all of these things. I'm going to ask you to send this information directly to SIOSH, because they're going to create a platform. And that platform is going to be your portal where you can go to. Okay, I just want to see, Richard's giving me a call over here. Richard, yep. Can you hear me? You can't see the page. What can you see at the moment, Richard? Oh, no, you can see my face, but you can't see the screen. Okay, that's cool. Let me just quickly fix that. Thanks, Richard. Appreciate that. Right, so there we go. That's a nice technical way of doing it. Let's just quickly go back and share screen. Now, I'm sure you should be able to see that. Okay, so we have share screen up here, and we trust that that's working. One of the things that I've learned over the last couple of months, because of COVID and Zoom and stuff like that, I never get too fussed about what's going on technically, because sometimes things fail. But what I do is I re-record it and just send it out as a recording without any participants. So hopefully, Richard, can you just give me a WhatsApp and just tell me whether you can see that the two pineapples. So we're comparing apples with apples or pineapples with pineapples. So let's just quickly see. Damien's on the line over here. Damien, can you see it? I'm not sure. Damien's reconnecting. So Penny, can you just take my phone? Okay, Richard still says no screen. That's odd. All righty, just stand by as I reset this all for us, please. That's great. Not sure why it is not picking that up, but hey, this is what I was saying earlier on. We've learned that you can actually, it should be that one, and now you should be able to see it. There we go. Hopefully you can all see that, and that share screen. So if somebody can just send a message to Penny, she's grabbed my phone. Okay, so now everybody can see that. Fantastic. Okay, and I'm just admitting a whole bunch of other people. Yeah, this is fun. Kind of like driving, it's like flying an airplane without a pilot's license. And sometimes it's a little bit more challenging flying an airplane, of course. Okay, so this is the third session in our entire process. And you can see the other videos. And of course, I'm going to ask you at this stage, if you don't mind, if you're new, won't you please, let's just quickly go there, just send a WhatsApp message to me, 2014, if you've just logged on. Then I said, for those who will want to see the visuals, that if you're new, you can register on our website, safetytrainingkits.com. I introduced our training, our team, IntraSafe's team. I told them a little bit about what we do. I spoke about myself, and then the most important thing is I just used the disclaimer, and I said, I'm not a lawyer, but we have a couple of lawyers and Department of Employment and Labor former inspectors that are on site on the coffee club. I mentioned about the fact that the legislation had to change because accidents were taking place. And I mentioned the fact that Jay Singh, the developer of the Tomgart Mall, has subsequently passed away. As a result of that, I said that we are literally in a situation where they, in 2014, said we need to change the legislation. They brought out a bill, which Klaas Lucht commented on his website. And I personally had the opportunity of looking at that legislation, or the proposed legislation. Then we got to a stage where we said they brought out another bill, and that came out on the 10th of March. I think I'm getting to where I was previously, and Cabinet has invited us now to comment on that bill. As a result of that, I created the coffee club, and the whole idea is that we'd have a group of people that were going to talk to each other via Facebook, via WhatsApp, via YouTube, via MailChimp, and I will also be using these platforms so that we can talk to you. And then we created a Facebook page, which has already been populated by about 36 people, and I'm going to invite you to participate there. Really would like you to participate in this entire process. And sure, I definitely need it. I used to be on radio. There was years ago, I was on Radio 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒑𝒐𝒑𝒐𝒑 op Radio 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒑𝒐𝒑𝒐𝒑 Ken Annandale met die nuus. And I had a young man that was actually in the studio with me, and he used to run all the technicals. And now I've got dual screens and technical, and I'm using my cell phone as well. So I'm just having to get used to all of this. And the nice thing is we can do it. All of us can do these things. Okay, doke. So as a result, we've created 2 sessions. That was video number 1 and video number 2. You would have received them in the WhatsApp message earlier on. And I'd strongly encourage you to watch both. The first one's an intro, and the second one is looking at the Occupational Health and Safety Act principles. And then I said, if I irritate you with all my messaging, please just opt out. Tell me you want to opt out, and that's totally cool. I said the objective of the coffee club was to refresh people so they understand the legislation, to revisit the principles, to compare apples with apples and pineapples with pineapples, and that's where I was. I also mentioned in video number 1 that we are going to be running training, and this is going to be an important session where we're going to deal, this is going to be 4 or 5 hours of Occupational Health and Safety Act legislative legal compliance training for management, so we can bring management up to scratch as quickly as possible. I'll mention the price of it. It's 1,250 Rand, irrespective of the number of people that you actually have in the session. So if you have a company with 15 people, that's fine, same price. And if you happen to be an affiliate, you get it for free. I must mention it's non-credit bearing training, and we will include the Zoom recording. So the 4 or 5 hours that we record will include that for you. Now, there's more information over there. We'll come back in a moment, but let's get into session 3. There we go. So the topic of session 3 is radical changes previously proposed to the 2014 or in the 2014 Occupational Health and Safety Bill. Those of you that registered, I want to say thank you for sending 2014 to me. Now I know that you've registered. And with that in mind, everything I say to you here is essentially in the former bill. This is not the current bill. This is not the 2020 bill. This is the former bill. But we believe that there are going to be great parallels between this and that. It's been mentioned in Parliament. It's been mentioned at the SIOS conferences on a number of occasions that it's coming, and it looks as though it's really here. This is the first time that we hear that Cabinet have actually approved it and sent it out for comment. So understanding the legislation is really important. We say there are 3 parties involved. Firstly, there's the state. Then there is the employer and the employee, and you can see there's different sections that apply to them. And then, of course, there's the state again. Now, those are the basic breakdowns of it. Then we have these different sections, and these different sections will then relate to and speak to what the Department of Employment and Labor or the ministry requires of you and I, employers and employees. Now, that's part of the existing act. So what do we expect in the new one? Well, there are a couple of things that we can expect in the new one. For instance, there's going to be new definitions, and there's going to be new concepts, and this moves the legislation. If this happens, it moves the legislation directly into the human resources, labor relations field, because you'll see there it talks about consultation and negotiation to conclude collective agreements between employer, employees, representatives, trade unions on matters of health and safety. And they now introduce Commission for Conciliation, Mediation, and Arbitration, which was not there previously, which is very interesting. Okay, then amongst the definitions that are going to change, we also see that there's a host of them. I'm not going to get into all of them. There's way too many of them, but they're going to address in the new legislation the issue of gender, where he is replaced by he, she, and or whatever the term is that they're going to be using. You'll also see there that the definition of danger changes, and they talk about adverse health effects. And now, having said that, let me just quickly explain to you what you're seeing on the screen there. The black writing is what is currently in the existing Occupational Health and Safety Act. The red writing is what is in the bill or the proposed bill. They're going to introduce a definition on hazardous substances. They're going to change the definition of risk. They're going to add in a whole bunch of things there. And this, when I say they are going to, please, once again, here's the disclaimer. This is the 2014 bill that was sent out or circulated some time ago. The definition of employer may change, and that's an important one there because we understand employer to mean different things now. They're going to suggest, well, I'm suggesting that they're going to change the definition of incident to occurrence, which is a new one as well. Listed work, which we remember, these changes were proposed in the 2014 bill. It's going to talk about listed work. It's going to make listed work something active, something that we can all understand and participate in. Then, of course, there's also the issue of local authorities that's going to be introduced. Occupational diseases is going to be a new definition if they introduce it as such. Then occupational health standards. This is something that we've been talking about for a long time, ISO standards. And one of my colleagues was saying that he thinks that ISO 45001 may be written into the law, because if that happens, it's going to change the face of occupational health and safety management forever. Then there is the occupational hygienist, which is interesting. This is going to be a professional person. And you'll notice there that it talks about somebody who is competent, capable, and so forth. They're going to introduce, hopefully, a decent definition of risk assessment, or as we know it, HIRA, hazard identification and risk assessment. And those of you that use our training material know that we've got a training program on HIRA, and all of our training material will be upgraded, updated, refreshed to cover the legislation as it may be. We may see the definition risk management coming into here, together with a safety management system, which is interesting. They're going to expand on a safety standard and then introduce SANAS, the South African National Accreditation System. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with AIAs, Authorized Inspection Authorities, and obviously this is going to be a way to govern them, to control them, to make sure that the quality is correct and right. So if you happen to be a consultant, this may be something that you need to take a strong, hard look at to ensure that you could become an accredited body under SANAS. Now, I just want to say this at this stage, it's really awkward when everybody, Dick, Tom, and Harry, uses the word accreditation. So we'll know this for a fact, that we've got 𝒂𝒂𝒐𝒂𝒐𝒔 accreditation or NQF accreditation. We also know that within the SARS realm and world, they talk about accreditation there. We know that there are various other organizations and places where accreditation is used. And I saw a regulation the other day where they talk of the Department of Employment and Labor accrediting a training program. Well, we've got to work through this term over here, and this word accreditation is used widely, and it's hopefully something that we can comment on and just ask them to change the terminology. Right, there's going to be possibly a definition on self-employment, which is interesting, and then a general standard. That's an interesting one again, because in many instances, I think that you would agree with me that we actually don't know in many instances which standard we should follow and who writes the standards and so forth. From there onwards, we can take it one step further, and they're introducing trade unions in a greater way, because now they're referring to the newer act, which is also in 1995. Volunteer, that's an interesting definition. It's going to come into the bill. Hopefully, we'll see it. Or maybe you don't like it, so we can debate it. Then it talks about who this act may and may not apply to. And from there onwards, I just want to quickly skip this one. So you can see that's setting up the legislation. Then the Health and Safety Council that we've got, the 2014 bill suggested that there would be 3 Department of Labor inspectors, so keep an eye on that. And the period that they would be appointed to would be up to 5 years. Then we know that they've currently got technical committees, but they should or would possibly be introducing a thing called a sectoral advisory forum. Sure, the health and safety management system, which the chief inspector may tell us, tell you, tell the employer to create a management system. And with that, let me just quickly take a sip of water and allow 1 or 2 more people to come into the webinar today. So to all the people that have come in, I want to say welcome. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. My intention with the training program that I mentioned earlier on is that we actually break it down, take some time, discuss it, go through it, and with that, ensure that our new safety practitioners, maybe our employers, supervisors, foremen, charge hands, managers, get a better understanding of the legislation, because there are a number of things that you do need to know. Now, as we used to lecture on the Occupational Health and Safety Act, we used to see this term called reasonably practicable. Now, if the 2014 bill is adopted as is, reasonably practicable falls away in many instances as far as the employer is concerned. Now, that is a very, very concerning element there. And I was looking at it today, and I see reasonably practicable for employees, but seem to be not for employers. That's interesting. Have a look at that, and we'll reference it. Now, at this stage, I want to say that I sent out an invitation If you don't have a copy of the Act, you can just download it off that WhatsApp invitation. We've got it on the website, you can collect it. And as I've done, I've printed the entire thing so that I can start scribbling on it. So document number 1 is get yourself a copy of the Act that you can scribble on, make notes and so forth. And as we go through this, you can watch this video at a later stage, and you can also just make notes as we go along, watching the video and the legislation with a highlighter. Okay, so from there, let's just move on. Now, remember we just spoke recently, a couple of minutes ago, about risk assessment. And have a look at Section 8. Everybody currently knows Section 8, quotes Section 8, familiar with Section 8. But folks, have a look at Section 8. It's changing. It looks as though the whole of Section 8 is going to change. I mentioned the fact that we're going to have to teach people how to do a hazard identification and risk assessment. And this will then continue in terms of employer and employee. Here's an example of where they've taken out reasonably practicable. So if I may, I'm just going to look at this one over here. And you know what I normally do with the legislation is I take a piece of legislation and turn it into bullet points so that I can understand it and I can explain it to other people. But it says here, an employer shall ensure that no employee is permitted to do any work. No longer are they suggesting that reasonably practicable is acceptable. That's an interesting one. That's going to have an impact on how we manage health and safety in the workplace. Okay, so that course that I was talking about, we also have all the training materials, unit standard aligned. You can acquire it if you want to, with facilitator guides and assessor guides and moderator guides and portfolio of evidence and all that type of stuff. It's there, it's available. You can actually acquire it from us. But, and may I just say that if you do get that training material from us, any changes that happen in terms of legislation will be done free of charge. So we'll update it as far as possible. There we go. Now, here's an interesting one. We know that Section 8 currently says that the employer shall inform, instruct, train, and supervise. And they've added in a section over here, which we may see in the 2020 bill, where it says, and you must communicate the relevant components of the risk management plan to every employee. So let me just give you a heads up over here. That means that any and all training that's going to take place is going to have to be modified. Now, that's what we do. We'll help you with that wherever we can. And the idea is that we'll provide you with the material, and then you can go ahead and you can run the training based on your risks within your workplace. Okay, so here we see employer and self-employed in relation to the non-employee, and we can carry on from there. We see it continues here talking about the non-employee, and it talks about what the employer and the self-employed's responsibility is and so forth. Then the manufacturer, we know and are familiar with this section over here, but please have a look there. If this bill is implemented, have a look at 1B. The article is accompanied by instructions which include precautionary measures to be adhered to. So if you're a manufacturer, now you're going to have to write an instruction manual for whatever this article may be. And obviously there's a definition for articles. I'm not going to get into now. We'll get into that in the training session. Then we move on. Section 11 talks about listed work, and it just says that the minister may, after consultation, but look at this. It says that when listed work is declared, then the employer shall conduct a risk assessment, risk assessment, risk assessment. And you can see that coming up over and over and over again. Listed work, it continues and says the employer shall ensure that a workplace-specific risk management plan. So here's not only the assessment, but also a plan. And then, of course, we must inform the employee. Section 13 has always said that. Notice how it says changes things his to her, or his or her, and that's a genderization, like a tenderization of a good steak. So changing the legislation, also making this legislation as compliant with the Constitution as far as possible. Now, part of the process is making people aware. We do have training material for that, a unit standard line training program called the Inductor. And then from there, we move on to the employee. And I saw that in the notice that the chief inspector sent out, he said that we must take note of the fact that the powers and rights of employees are going to change and be enhanced. So we can expect change in this one, section 14. Whew, that's interesting. We'll see how it moves on from there. Also have a look at, it talks about reasonably practicable for the employee. Then moving on to the Chief Executive Officer, section 16. Notice that that whole section is going to change. And it says that the Chief Executive Officer shall develop, implement, continuously review the health and safety management system as the employer may be directed in terms of section 7. So that's going to draw CEOs in and obviously make them responsible. It carries on and says, unlike the current one, that the section 16.2 person may not further delegate the duty to any other person. So keep an eye out for that one. We can discuss that one as and when the bill is published, and we can talk about it extensively. Now, have a look at this one over here, health and safety reps, section 17, and you'll notice once again at the bottom we spoke about Labor Relations Act and human resources people having to be involved in health and safety, which, by the way, with respect to human resources people, it's about jolly time. Okay, then it carries on and talks about the functions of the health and safety rep with a couple of other additions to it. I don't think there's anything too radical over there, but just have a look at section 18 over here, where we see there's quite a lot of changes. So our health and safety rep training will obviously have to be developed as well. We'll go through the process of changing that. Then it talks about the health and safety rep. So I noticed that people talk about a she rep. Can I just quickly correct you? There is no such thing as a she rep in the Occupational Health and Safety Act. And with love and respect to myself, because I do it sometimes as well, I use the term she rep. But there is no such thing as a she rep in the Act. Also, there's no OSH Act. That's a piece of American legislation. But now I'm back on my hobby horse. Okay, it talks about investigations, and we see there that the health and safety representative must inform employees regarding arrangements for undertaking the investigation, or maybe that's a duty of the employer. And we've got a training program called the Invest Track for that specific purpose as well. Also, unit standard aligned. So notice functions of the health and safety rep has been extended, and I think we're going to see a couple of changes in this area as well. Okay, enough on that, more training material. Then the committee, please have a look there. Previously, it said where there were 2 or more health and safety reps, you must establish a health and safety committee. Now it's where there's 1 or more health and safety rep, we must establish a health and safety committee. That's an interesting point. We can debate that, we can discuss that. And as we go through this process, we'll unpack every single one of these elements, every single section. We can unpack the comparative, the old and the new, and you can comment on it, and we'll then be able to submit, or you'll be able to submit that information to 𝒑𝒐, because they've got that that forum that they're going to create. They're also creating a technical committee that can assist us with that. Right, back to collective agreements, blah, blah, blah. We see this coming in. It's a change, it's more labor related and so forth. And I don't want to get into too much of that, but I do want to talk about this where the trade union may declare a dispute. Interesting. Now, if you happen to be a health and safety practitioner and you've never done any labor relations training, or you've never been on any workshops, now's the time to enroll. If you happen to be a training provider and you can provide that training, tell us so we can notify all our clients where they can go for that training. I do know that we've got a couple of human resources practitioners that would be able to assist us with that, and we can then just notify everybody that the course is being run, probably a blended learning course, which might be a very good idea. Okay, doke. So having said that, let's move on out of section 20. Let's go and have a look at the functions, and you'll see that there is functions. They've been expanded on, and the health and safety training, health and safety committee must now also talk about the information training, assessment, monitoring, and recording provisions are in place. Now, this is something which is going to be very, very interesting because, of course, on the one hand, we've got 𝒑𝒐, but on the other hand, we've got the Occupational Health and Safety Act that says all your training must be risk specific. I'm not sure, and I'm speaking to the training providers, I'm not sure how much extra work you're going to have to do to modify the training courses, customize them, adapt them to meet your client's specific needs. And if you look at F, it says, shall review the training and information provided to employees. The committee must, before running those courses, review the training provided. That's going to be an interesting one there. And it says regarding any hazardous substance or conditions, blah, blah, blah. All right, moving on. Don't have time to get into all of this because we're going to start running out of time shortly. Okay, general prohibitions, we've got that. Certain deductions prohibited, a little change there. Reporting of section 24 incidents, or remember, it's going to be, they're going to call them occurrences from now on. And those of you that are familiar with it, you'll see that there's a couple of changes. I just want to mention those of you that are in the first aid training game, your training providers, please take note of the fact that you may not run a level 1, 2, and 3 course anymore, according to the chief inspector's instructions. It has to be unit standard aligned. You have to follow that long and tedious protocol, which I fondly call the verification cycle. You may not, and I'm saying this, you may not use non-subject matter specialists to run your first aid training programs. If you need more information on that, just drop me a line and I'll send you all the documentation that we've got on that. Sure. Okay. Now moving on back to section 24. You'll notice that they're taking out this thing about a major incident, and it says in the course of the employee's employment, an incident occurred which resulted in personal injury, illness, or death of an employee, blah, 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 where the hazardous substances or biological agents were spilt or released. And I thought, wow, yeah, of course, COVID-19. COVID-19, now, if this is implemented like this is going to be a reportable event. I think, I don't know, we can talk about this. But that was in the 2014 bill. So let's see what comes up. Now, here's a brand new one. Added to Section 24 are annual statistics that are going to have to be sent to the Department of Employment and Labor on the first day of March each year. Good luck, Department of Labor. I don't know how you can handle all that. Gosh, they can barely keep up with all the incidents that are taking place. Then Section 26, victimization forbidden. Very, very, very big change over there. You need to get to know and understand how that one works. Then, just for out of interest sake, I wanted to introduce you to 𝒑𝒂𝒂𝒍𝒍, the chief inspector. You can take a photograph of his email address and you can talk to him. And he's a highly intelligent man. He's a really great guy to work with. We've had the opportunity just on one occasion to work with him with the SHASTAC, the Science Health and Safety Training Advisory Committee. I like him and respect him. And he's a Cape Townian as well, so I like him even more as a result of that. And he's got a hell of a task on his hands, obviously. Now, he's able to do certain things, and I'm not going to get into this, because now we're getting into the inspectorate part. I said, firstly, there was the state, then the employer and the employee, and then, of course, the state again. So it just talks about how we're going to identify inspectors, what their functions are. You'll notice over there, GHI, it says there that they can issue an administrative fine. That's interesting. So they'll be able to issue spot fines, take photographs and things of that nature. That carries on over here in terms of functions of an inspector, but that's more for the inspectorate. Then their investigations, not yours, but these investigations may be founded on incidents that take place which you would have investigated. Then the obligation to assist the inspector as and where and when necessary. There is an appeal process, which is very important. They've expanded on that one as well. And when I say they have, once again, disclaimer, this is the 2014 bill. Whew. There's an appeal process where you can request a review of the inspector's decisions. Now, I want you to look over here. Please have a look. Previously, we spoke about Section 35, and please note it says 35A. So instead of adding to the 50 sections in the legislation, the proposal in 2014 was just to go A, B, C, D, Section 35, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So this is 35A. Then it moves on to 36. And 36 talks about disclosure of information. And it talks about the Promotion of Access to Information Act. Now, I'm sure many of you already attended these workshops. It's a very, very important workshop to attend. This is something that you need to know if you're in the training industry. Remember, you've got all the data and information that you've received from learners and 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒍, NQF. They require, QCTO requires information, what you do with that information, how you handle it. That's a whole new lecture. And by the way, if you go onto the 𝒑𝒐𝒔 website, you'll see that there is going to be a workshop on this given topic. Who's going to run it? I'm not sure. Then we go disclosure of information. This is being expanded on. Please be aware and alert to that. Okay, so I said 35 A, B, C, D, E. It looks like it's 37. And here we introduce a new section, 37A, administrative fines. This is interesting. And obviously, it's in terms of various legislative requirements. Then criminal liability. Now, in the former lessons that we did, the former sessions we did, we spoke about the fact that this is criminal legislation. Very important to note, because obviously you don't want to land up in a situation where you can be fined and or imprisoned. So 37 talks about hindering of administration of justice, furnishing false information, Section 37D. These are obviously based on experiences that the inspectorate have had when trying to get information from people with regards incidents and people hiding incidents and make-believe statistics and so forth. F, failure to comply. That carries on. Interesting. Not going to get into the detail just yet. Then, of course, 38, offenses and penalties, which we know. And you'll see that this is changing. It's all in red. And you'll see there's a 100,000 Rand fine over there, or imprisonment not exceeding 1 year, or both. I don't want to scare you. We also know about exemptions, section 40. Right now, 𝒑𝒔 is recommending anybody that cannot comply with the requirements of the chief inspector as far as the first aid training, that they apply for an exemption to the Department of Employment and Labor and the chief inspector so that they can be exempted from some of those requirements. There's a whole study on that. I can give you more information on that. But right now, most of us had never heard of section 40, never took it seriously, but there is section 40 where you can apply for a variety of sort of lenient approaches to the application of the legislation. Then section 43, regulations, and you'll notice that we've recently received the hazardous chemical substance regulation or hazardous chemical agents regulation, the biological substance regulation, the asbestos abatement regulation, and so forth, and that falls under this regulation over here. And then non-compliance, they are suggesting a fine of up to 5 million rand. Now, please take note. The fine can also, and the prison sentence can also be adjusted according to the Magistrates Courts Act. So this could be 5 million rand per offence. But we'll talk more about that, and certainly the legal minds that we have that are listening to this presentation right now will be able to provide us with more information. There will be an admission of guilt section where if a fine has been, or a spot fine has been issued, where you can actually pay an admission of guilt. Then we spoke about SANAS, and obviously there's incorporation of health and safety standards. And remember, I mentioned very briefly, maybe 45,001 could be a standard. We spoke briefly about the AIA, the Authorized Inspection Authority. Now there's a 44A there that's being extended. This is an important one. We'll be able to study this, talk about this, and I trust that we'll be able to unpick it, literally drive deep into it, and get legal opinion on this. And then, of course, the recommendations that come from it, the comments, the ideas, the critique, the compliments, they can be sent to 𝒑𝒔, and 𝒑𝒔 will then pass them on to the Department of Employment and Labor. Okay, now having said that, you can send them on to the Department of Employment and Labor. Nothing stops you from doing that. And if you happen to be an occupational health and safety practitioner, may I suggest that you engage your clients in a similar discussion to this? May I suggest that you actually host a couple of webinars or Zoom activities, and you talk to them about it. Not only is it a great way of servicing your clients' needs, it's also a fantastic thing that you can do to generate some additional income. Okay, that's all AIA, section 45, I'm not going to talk about because that's clearly on the legislative side. And then they're going to be calling this the Amendment Act or something of that nature. Now, in the bill, the 2014 bill, they make mention of the fact that there's a schedule of fines, and that schedule of fines is very important. We take note of that. And there we go. How much the fines could be. And please notice, 1 million, 1 million, 5 million, 1 million, 1 million, 200,000, and so forth and so forth. And if they are serious about this, and if this goes to court, and if it goes through in court, it's something that you do need to take seriously. And then, of course, there's the spot fines, the administrative fines, as they call them. Great. I'm finished that, and I trust that I'm within my time frame. I'm rushing through this. I do want to say to those of you that indicated the other day that you want to attend the training, that's fine. It's going to happen on the 21st of April, which is Wednesday next week. It's going to start at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's going to go through to about, I talk a lot, about after lunch. There we go. I don't know how long this is going to be, but we'll record it, and we'll literally unpick every single section of the current legislation to the best of my ability. You're more than welcome to attend. If you happen to be an affiliate, it's free. You don't have to pay for it. For those of you that would be paying, we're going to be using a thing called Quicket. That's a platform where it's actually, you purchase the ticket and then you get access to the training. And obviously, we're going to be doing it via Zoom. So please make sure that you and your colleagues are up and running as far as Zoom is concerned. I want to suggest to you, please, if you don't mind, this is not 𝒑𝒂 accredited training, although the training material that I'll be using is unit standard aligned, but we're not going to go through a portfolio of evidence, and you will not get credits, but you will, if you're a member of 𝒑𝒔, you will get CPD points. Okay, so that's it. I think I've said enough on that score. That's Wednesday the 25th. It's next week. So what I'd like to ask you to do, if you're interested in attending that, can you just WhatsApp me on this number, 082-920-8912. Just WhatsApp the word OHSA, Occupational Health and Safety Act. Well, it's an acronym. Just send me OHSA, OHASA, to my number so that I can see, make arrangements and so forth. I need to possibly upgrade my Zoom account to accommodate more people. Sure. Okay, I'm about to end these share screen right now. And I just want to say this. I really appreciate the fact that you folk have been sending me messages, compliments, and things like that. And I honestly, it takes a lot of work to put all of this together, as I'm sure you appreciate. And it's nice to hear from you. But what I want from you, really, I want your constructive critique. Please, if you could say too fast, too little, too much, I know that the fonts are too small on the presentation, and I'll be increasing the size of the fonts. And I've had a couple of people saying, can you change color contrasts and things like that? The answer is yes. I had somebody say, can I give him a copy of the 2014 bill? No. I'm not going to hand out that bill. I've got it, obviously. That's how I've been working through this material over here. I'm not going to hand it out for the simple reason is that the last time we did that back in 2015, it created chaos in the marketplace. So in this instance, I'm going to be respectful of the Chief Inspector and the Department of Employment and Labor's requirements, and we're going to send the material out when it is official. But you do have a copy of the Act that you can get, and you can make notes. So I'm going to be posting this video onto our Facebook page as well, and make sure that you and your colleagues watch it. If you found this useful, please let me know. And with that, I'm going to stop the screen share, and I'm going to just, let's quickly do that. And I'm going to go back to all the people that are here. Whew. Okay, that was a mouthful. Can I just see, I'm going to ask everybody to unmute, if you wouldn't mind. Ask all to unmute. I just want to find out if this has been useful. I see we've still got 49 people that have stayed. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I can hear my phone in the background going bleep bleep with all the comments. And I want to say to you once again, if you're new, you've just come on, thank you so much. I appreciate that enormously. So let's see. Are there any comments from your side? Anybody? Can you give me my phone?
Grandpa, give the house key to
Okay, so let's see. Are there any questions or comments? We're still recording at this stage. The recording is still on.
What is it, darling?
I can hear somebody speaking in the background there. What's it, darling? That's fine. My darling is just giving me my phone. Okay, if there's no current comments, what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the recording so that we can just open the microphones and we can discuss backwards and forwards. I see there's over 40 chats here. Thank you so much. And with that, I want to say to everybody who's watching the recording, please follow the prompts, so the WhatsApp prompts, so we can communicate with you. And those of you that have joined us and been with me for the whole hour or so, whatever the timing is, I'm not even sure. I want to say thank you so much. And I look forward to the next session. So from Ken and Penny here in Mauritius to everybody there in sunny South Africa or cloudy South Africa, we say farewell. See you next week. Bye for now.